What happens when the man who built the business with his bare hands finds out his staff no longer cleans it with care? Dawson stood in the back office of his ninth restaurant, staring at a printed email from a customer who visited the location 2 weeks ago. Food was good. But the kitchen smelled awful. Something's off. I've eaten at your other restaurants and never had this issue. Miles rubbed his face and sighed. He wasn't angry at the customer, he was angry at himself. He'd started this fast casual restaurant chain 10 years ago, working day and night to open the first location. He'd washed dishes, grilled burgers, and mopped floors until the early morning hours. Now he had 9 stores, over 100 employees, and barely enough time to visit each place the way he used to. He trusted his district managers. They sent reports, but something about this one bothered him. This store 7, used to be one of the best. Then suddenly, complaints were trickling in. Not about food, but about the environment, the feeling, the energy. He didn't want secondhand answers, he wanted the truth, so he put together a plan. He shaved off his signature beard, tossed on a pair of thick-rimmed glasses, wore a beanie to hide his receding hairline, and added fake tattoos to his arms. Not a single person at Store 7 had ever met him in person. He'd hired the manager, Dean, through a recruiter, and everyone else had been hired after that. It was plausible, especially in a corporate chain where the real owner rarely showed his face. He called the district manager, told him he needed a random store to send a new trainee for a few days. Said he wanted to see how training materials were being followed. It was a lie, but it worked, and that's how Miles Dawson became Chris, a quiet new hire who just moved from Arizona. The first day, he walked into Store 7 with a duffel bag full of non-slip shoes and nerves. A woman in her mid-20s with short curls and sharp eyes waved him over. "You the new guy? I'm Ariel, assistant manager. You're on dish today." "Nice to meet you," Miles said. "Let's do it." The kitchen smelled like grease and sweat. No one was smiling. A cook tossed a pan into the sink and muttered, "Good luck, rookie." Miles rolled up his sleeves and got to work. The dish pit was chaos: piles of trays, smudged plastic cups, and sticky utensils. It wasn't gross, but it wasn't what Miles would have allowed back when he ran the kitchen himself. Still, he didn't say anything. He just worked, listening, watching. At lunch, he sat outside with Ariel and a young cook named Jordan. "Been here long?" Miles asked. 6 months, said Jordan. "Long enough to know not to ask for help when it gets busy." Ariel snorted. "Don't start griping." Jordan looked at her. "I'm not. I'm just saying Dean disappears, always handling paperwork. Meanwhile, we're short 2-line cooks and people are getting burned." Miles narrowed his eyes. "Why are you short?" "Manager fired one for being late." "The other quit after that." Ariel shrugged. "No replacements yet." Miles frowned but didn't press. He had to see more. The next morning he arrived early before anyone else. He wanted to check the walk-in fridge. He wanted to check the mop closet. He was halfway through sweeping under the prep table when a voice called out behind him. "Hey, you need gloves if you're gonna wash." Miles turned around. A tall man in a dirty apron stepped out from the back hallway. His hands were red and cracked. "I'm Mason," he said. "Been here forever." "I usually do dishes, but looks like they're sticking you with it today." Miles smiled. "Yeah, I don't mind." Mason grabbed a bucket and pulled out a clear jug from under the sink. "You'll need this." Miles looked closer. The label was half torn, but he could make out the words, "Industrial degreaser, not for direct contact, use protective gear." Mason poured it into the sink. "Wait," Miles said, his voice sharper than he meant. "You wash dishes with that?" "Yeah, cuts grease fast." "Dean said it's fine." Miles froze, his stomach dropped. He looked at Mason's hands raw, peeling. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "No gloves?" Miles asked. "I asked," Mason said. "He said it's fine if I rinse fast." Miles stepped back, heart pounding. He stared at the sink full of cloudy, chemical-laced water. This wasn't a bad day. This was a safety hazard, and someone had made it normal. He didn't say anything else. Not yet. He just stood there, staring at the water, wondering how far this rot had spread. Miles worked in silence for the next hour. hands deep in the dishwater, watching Mason shuffle between stations like a man on autopilot. The degreaser left a chemical tang in the air that clung to his throat. Every time Mason gripped a tray or dunked a pan, his cracked fingers flexed like they were made of glass. No one else seemed to notice or care. By 8:30, the kitchen buzzed with movement. Jordan was on the flat top, flipping breakfast wraps with one earbud in. Ariel stood at the expo window, calling out orders and checking timestamps. Miles caught her eye as he dropped off a stack of trays. "Hey," she said. "When you get a second, can you refill the sanitizer buckets? They should be changed every 4 hours, but Dean wants us to do it early today." Health inspectors doing a surprise round this week. Miles nodded and grabbed the test strips from the shelf. The solution in the current bucket had already faded to a pale pink, far too weak. He made a fresh one, carefully measuring the concentrate, then placed it back at the prep station. As he turned, he heard Dean's voice cutting through the back door. "Where's the new guy?" Miles barely had time to straighten up before Dean walked into the kitchen. Early 40s, red polo untucked, sunglasses perched on his head. He didn't look at anyone when he spoke. "Chris, right?" Miles nodded, wiping his hands on his apron. "Come with me." They stepped into the storage room. It was cluttered, half-crushed boxes of gloves on the floor, a mop leaning against a crate of frozen fries. A clipboard hung crooked on the wall, mostly blank. Dean leaned against the doorframe. "So you were sent from corporate for a training check." "That's right," Miles said. Dean tilted his head. "Be honest, you're not one of those guys who takes notes on everything and sends them up, are you?" "Just here to learn," Miles replied. Dean squinted at him, then shrugged. "Good, because this store's got a rhythm. You follow instructions, stay in your lane, you'll do fine." He stepped closer. "But if you start poking around trying to be a hero, it won't go well, understood?" Miles held his gaze. "Understood. Good. Get back to it." The door closed behind him. Miles walked back to the kitchen, jaw clenched. Dean wasn't just inattentive, he was actively discouraging accountability. That changed everything. By mid-morning, the first real challenge hit. An order for a large catering pickup came through 15 boxed lunches for a local nonprofit. Jordan looked at the ticket and groaned. "No one prepped extra grilled chicken," he said. "We're already down a cook and now I gotta batch this solo." Ariel walked over, scanning the screen. "I'll jump on cold line. Chris, can you handle backup dishes and keep an eye on the trash runs?" Miles nodded and moved fast. The trash bin out back was already full, flies buzzing around the torn bags. He tied them off, hauled them across the lot, and spotted a handwritten sign taped to the dumpster. "Use other side broken hinge." He circled around, lifted the lid, and hoisted the first bag in. That's when he heard it, a voice low and strained. "Hey, wait." He turned. A teenage employee stood near the back door, holding her wrist with one hand. Her visor was askew and her name tag read Lena. "What happened?" Miles asked. She looked down, hesitant. "Burned myself on the fryer. Pretty bad. Did you tell anyone?" "Dean told me to run ice on it. Said we can't afford to lose another cashier today." Miles stepped closer. Her wrist was red and starting to blister. "You need to sit. Now." She hesitated, then followed him inside. Miles grabbed Ariel. "She needs first aid, fryer burn." Ariel's face fell. "Dean was supposed to, he didn't." Miles cut in. Ariel guided Lena toward the break room, grabbing a first aid kit on the way. Miles returned to the dish pit, his hands shaking. This wasn't just neglect, it was dangerous. By late afternoon, the team was unraveling. Line tickets backed up. A delivery of produce arrived with no one to sign for it. Dean was nowhere to be found. Miles caught him eventually lounging in the office with his feet on the desk, scrolling through his phone. "They need help online," Miles said, stepping in. Dean didn't look up. "They'll manage. They're behind 20 minutes and short 2 people. Dean sighed, finally putting his phone down. "You new guys always think you know better. This store runs just fine. It's not my job to babysit." "No," Miles said evenly. "It's your job to lead." Dean stood up slowly. "You've got one more day here. I'd watch your tone." Miles didn't respond. He turned and walked out, heart pounding. That night, after the last customer left and the kitchen began to wind down, Mason was scrubbing the sink again. Miles approached him quietly. "Been wondering something," Miles said. "Why do you stay?" Mason paused, then shrugged. "I'm 51. No degree, did some time back in the day. This place was the first to give me a shot, figured I'd earn my keep." "You have," Miles said. "You deserve better than this." Mason looked at him, eyes tired. "We all do." Ariel entered the back, wiping her forehead. "Lena's mom came to pick her up, said she's taking her to urgent care." "Did Dean speak to her?" Miles asked. "No, he ducked out 10 minutes ago." "Said he had a meeting." Miles nodded once. He'd seen enough. The next morning, he arrived an hour before opening. The store was silent still. He unlocked the office door with his master key, sat behind the desk, and waited. At 7:25, Dean walked in, holding a coffee. He stopped cold when he saw Miles sitting there, clean-shaven, glasses off, no beanie. "What the hell?" Miles stood. "My name's not Chris," he said. "It's Miles Dawson. I own this company." Dean's mouth opened, then closed. "I went undercover to see how this store was operating. What I found was unacceptable. Unsafe cleaning chemicals, ignored injuries, misused authority. You failed your team." Dean tried to recover. "Hold on. You don't understand the pressure." "No," Miles interrupted. "You don't understand responsibility. You're done." Effective immediately. Dean's face turned red. "You can't just—" "I just did." He stepped past him out into the kitchen. Ariel, Jordan, and Mason were already prepping. Everyone froze. Miles raised his voice. "My name is Miles Dawson. I'm the founder of this company. I've been working alongside you for the past 2 days." Mason dropped the scrub brush. Ariel's eyes widened. Jordan nearly dropped a pan. "I've seen how hard you work," Miles continued. "And I've seen how little support you've been given. That ends today." He turned to Mason. "No one should be handling chemicals without gloves. That stops now. Starting today, we're reviewing every cleaning product and protocol in this building." Mason just nodded, stunned. Miles turned to Ariel. "You've been holding this place together. You're the new acting general manager. We'll be bringing in support from another store to help during the transition." Ariel blinked, processing. "Wait, seriously?" "You've earned it," Miles said. "And we're hiring replacements for the open line spots immediately. Starting wage is increasing across all locations, not just here." Jordan let out a breath. "Finally." Miles looked around. "You all deserve a workplace that values your safety, your time, and your effort. This isn't just about fixing what's broken, it's about building the kind of company we set out to be." No one clapped. No one cheered, but the silence wasn't hollow. It was relief. It was respect. And it was the first honest moment that kitchen had seen in a long time. The next 48 hours were a blur of reorganization. Miles didn't leave the building. He commandeered a corner of the office with his laptop, phone, and a legal pad full of names and numbers. HR sent in a temporary compliance officer by noon. By evening, a regional training lead arrived from Store 2 to help stabilize operations. Miles kept every promise he'd made, but the real work was just beginning. At 6 the next morning, he stood outside the back entrance holding 2 paper trays of coffee and watched the sunrise ripple across the rooftop vents. The door creaked open behind him. Ariel stepped out, rubbing her arms against the morning chill. "You didn't sleep, did you?" Miles handed her a cup. "Not much, you." "I tried. Kept thinking about the schedule. We've got barely enough to cover dinner rush." Miles studied her face. Her expression was steady, but her voice carried something new, ownership. She wasn't just showing up anymore, she was leading. "I've got 2 cooks from Store 5 who can float in starting tomorrow," he said. "But today we'll have to cover smart. You take Expo, I'll backfill wherever you need." Ariel blinked, then raised an eyebrow. "You're seriously going to work line?" "I didn't shave my beard for nothing." She laughed, then looked away quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry, that was weird." No, it was human. Inside, the kitchen was already humming. Jordan unpacked produce while Mason restocked dry goods. A cashier named Tasha, one of the few employees who hadn't spoken much during the initial days, stood quietly at the register. Eyes flicking from screen to door like she was waiting for something to go wrong. Miles called out to her. "Morning. You good with opening today?" She hesitated. "Yeah." "If the card readers don't crash again." "What do you mean again?" "Sometimes they glitch. Dean said it wasn't worth replacing them yet." Miles didn't respond immediately. He walked around the counter, tapped through the system, and flagged the issue. Then he turned to her. "Thanks for telling me. And for sticking through it." Tasha gave a small nod, unsure if she was allowed to relax. By mid-morning, the place felt different, not fixed, but lighter. Still, stress clung to the edges. During the lunch rush, the line backed up past the door. Miles grilled chicken, Jordan handled wraps, and Ariel called out orders with military precision. But it wasn't enough. The printer jammed. A tray of lettuce spilled. A delivery driver showed up asking for a signature, but no one could break away. Mason stepped up without being asked. "I'll handle the door," he said, already pulling off his gloves. "You've got 3 tickets backed up." Miles just nodded, flipping a patty before it burned. At 2:15, a lull finally hit. Staff rotated out for staggered breaks, 10 minutes each, no more. Miles sat with Jordan in the break room, both of them nursing lukewarm coffee. "You ever think about quitting?" Miles asked casually. Jordan leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. "Last week, I called my cousin in San Diego, thought maybe I'd move, start fresh. But rent's crazy and I'd have to leave my sister here." Miles nodded once. "You're good at what you do." "I'm fast. Doesn't mean I'm good. You work clean, you don't cut corners, that makes you good." Jordan looked over. "You really meant all that?" "About changing things." "I don't say things I don't mean." Jordan stared for another second, then nodded slowly. "All right." At 3, a woman from HR arrived to conduct exit paperwork with Dean, who'd returned earlier only because he'd been summoned. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't apologize. Just signed what he needed to and left. Miles didn't watch him go. He was too busy reviewing applications from internal transfers, reviewing Ariel's proposed shift rotations, and checking safety compliance reports. At 4, Tasha approached him near the drink station. "There's a guy at the counter asking weird questions. Says he's from corporate logistics and wants to see the back." Miles stood immediately. The man at the register wore a wrinkled dress shirt and no name badge. His tone was clipped. "I'm here to survey back-of-house layout for inventory restructuring." "You're not listed on today's site visits," Miles said. The man barely looked up. "I was told this location was under review. I don't need clearance, just access." "You're done," Miles said. The man blinked. "Excuse me. You're not in uniform. You didn't check in through protocol. You bypassed the front office and tried to push past my cashier." "Who are you?" "I'm the owner." The man's face paled. "I thought this was still Dean's store." "It's not." The man stammered, then turned and left without another word. Tasha exhaled sharply. "What was that about?" "Someone trying to flex authority without earning it." She nodded. "Thanks for not brushing it off." "You shouldn't have to thank me for that." At 5, the new gloves arrived, 2 full boxes, enough for every station. Miles personally walked them back to Mason. "These are neoprene, chemical rated. Use them every time." Mason opened the box, flexed the material between his fingers. "These look real." "They are." Mason didn't say thank you. He just nodded and turned back to the sink. That meant more. Dinner ran smoother than expected. The new gloves cut clean-up time by nearly 20 minutes. Jordan's timing was tighter. Ariel's ticket management kept everything moving. Even Tasha cracked a small smile when a customer complimented the service. Still, not everything was fixed. Ariel pulled Miles aside near closing. "We've got a problem." "What is it?" "Lena's back tomorrow. Her mom called, said she still wants to work, but she's nervous, doesn't trust the safety procedures." Miles nodded. "She shouldn't have to. I've already drafted a burn protocol. First aid, reporting chain when to pull someone off shift, but we need a culture change, not just a checklist." "Then we start with her." The next morning, Lena arrived with a gauze wrap on her arm and her mother by her side. They looked cautious, halfway between polite and guarded. Miles met them at the door. "Lena," he said, "you don't have to jump into the line today. You can observe, train, or just decide if you want to be here." Her mother narrowed her eyes. Last week, she got burned and was told to run ice on it. "You understand what that does to a parent?" "Yes," Miles said, "and I'm sorry, no one will ever be told to ignore an injury here again." Lena nodded slowly. "I want to give it another shot." Her mother studied Miles's face, then gave a small nod of approval. By noon, Lena was back on register, shadowing Tasha. The two moved in sync, handing off receipts and sharing small smiles. Ariel passed by and gave Lena a thumbs up. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was real. Miles watched from the prep counter, arms crossed, apron dusted with flour. He'd uncovered the truth, fired the problem, empowered the right people. But the job wasn't over, it never would be. Leadership wasn't about fixing something once. It was about showing up again and again until the culture didn't need reminders, until people like Mason didn't have to settle. Until kids like Lena didn't have to suffer to be believed. Until excellence wasn't top-down but built from the daily choices of people who cared. And as Miles stepped back onto the floor, joining the lunch rush once more, he knew he wasn't just saving a store. He was rebuilding trust. One shift at a time. The week after Dean's removal was the hardest yet. Miles stayed at Store 7 every day, not as an owner hovering from the sidelines, but as a team member covering gaps wherever they appeared. For the first few days, the staff moved cautiously around him, still unsure where the boundaries were. But the tone had changed. There was no longer fear in the silences, just fatigue and the slow process of figuring out how to trust leadership again. On Tuesday morning, a city health inspector arrived unannounced. Ariel met him at the front, clipboard in hand, posture steady. Miles stood off to the side, arms crossed, letting her take the lead. She guided the inspector through every station, answered every question directly, and flagged the new first aid log they'd implemented. When he tested the sanitizer buckets and examined the chemical storage, he raised his eyebrows. "Someone's been busy." "We had a wake-up call," Ariel said. "We're not pretending it didn't happen," the inspector nodded. "That's the right way to handle it." They passed with a 97, a small dent for an improperly labeled drain cleaner but otherwise spotless. After he left, Ariel leaned against the back wall and looked over at Miles. "I didn't think I'd care this much about a clipboard score." "You care because you earned it," Miles said. "That's different from trying not to get blamed." She looked down at her shoes for a moment, then back up. "You staying much longer, until you don't need me here. Then I hope you've got a few more clean aprons." That afternoon, a tall man in his 30s arrived through the front door with a backpack and a nervous smile. He introduced himself as Noel, a transfer from Store 5. Miles had requested him personally after reviewing his file. 5 years of experience, cross-trained on every station, and 0 write-ups. Ariel walked him through the kitchen while Miles watched from the line. She didn't rush. She asked him what hours he preferred, what stations he liked most, and what conditions helped him do his best work. She didn't ask out of politeness. She asked to build a team. Noel ended up on grill that night, and Jordan immediately relaxed. The rhythm returned, orders moving faster, fewer mistakes, less stress. It wasn't perfect. A fryer jammed halfway through the rush and the receipt printer glitched again, but they handled it. Together, on Wednesday, Miles held a staff meeting 15 minutes before opening. Every employee stood in the back, leaning against prep tables or folding arms across aprons. Even Mason, who usually avoided gatherings, stood near the mop sink and listened. "There's no speech today," Miles said. "Just a question. What do you need to do your job well?" At first, no one spoke. Then Tasha raised her hand. "We need working headsets," she said. "The ones we have cut out during drive-through orders." "Noted," Miles said. "They'll be replaced this week." Jordan spoke next. "Can we get prep lists printed every morning, not just verbal walkthroughs?" Ariel nodded. "I can do that." Mason cleared his throat. I don't like how the mop bucket smells after a shift. Think the wheels are cracked. It leaks. Miles turned to Ariel. Add it to the supply order. She scribbled notes and the list grew. It wasn't about fancy upgrades, it was basic equipment, overlooked details, things that made a shift smoother or safer. After the meeting, Miles caught up with Mason near the dish station. "You doing all right?" Mason nodded once. "It's different." "Not easy, but better. You've been quiet. I'm waiting to see if it sticks." "That's fair," Miles said, "but I want you to know something." Mason looked at him, eyes steady. "There's an opening for shift lead. It's not posted yet. I want you to apply." Mason frowned. "I'm not a manager." "You don't have to be," Miles said. "You just have to care, and you do." Mason didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Let me think about it." By Thursday, the new gloves were standard at every station. Lena had been moved to back-of-house prep for lighter duties while she healed. She seemed more relaxed now, laughing quietly with Jordan while they diced vegetables. Her mother had checked in once, and Ariel had spoken with her directly to explain the changes. At the end of the day, Miles took Ariel aside in the office. "You've got the team in a better place. What's the next step?" She didn't hesitate. "Cross-training. We're too fragile right now. One call out and we're scrambling. I want at least 2 backups for every station." "Good," Miles said. "You'll get the hours approved. I also want to revise the onboarding manual. Half the stuff in there doesn't match how we actually train. You'll own it. Send me a draft by next week." She leaned against the desk. "You're really trusting me with this." "It's not trust," Miles said. "It's recognition." She didn't respond with words, just nodded, eyes clear. That night, as the last of the staff clocked out, Miles stayed behind with Mason to deep clean the dish pit. They worked side by side, not talking much. Just the sound of water running, trays clattering, and the occasional scrape of a brush. At one point, Mason said, "I'm gonna apply." Miles didn't look up. "Good. I don't want to prove anything. I just want to make it better." "That's exactly why you're right for it." On Friday, someone from corporate arrived to install the new card readers and headset system. Miles didn't hover, he let Ariel manage the tech rollout. She trained the team herself, had everyone practice using it in 2-minute drills between orders. That afternoon, Miles sat outside on a milk crate between trash runs. Jordan joined him, sipping on a sports drink. "You leaving soon?" "Probably Monday," Miles said. "You ready to run things without me?" Jordan smiled faintly. "We've been doing that. You're just good backup." Miles laughed. "Fair enough." "I've been thinking about staying," Jordan added. "Not just for my sister, for me." Miles didn't answer right away, he just nodded. That evening, Miles gathered the team in the dining area after close. No one wore uniforms anymore, just hoodies, jackets, and tired eyes. "I came here undercover because I didn't like what I was hearing," he said. "And what I saw was worse than I imagined. But what I also saw, what I see now, is a team that deserves better. And that's not something I say lightly." No one interrupted. "I'm not promising perfection, but I am committing to transparency, accountability, and respect. You'll always have a voice here. If that ever changes, you come to me." "Directly?" He paused, then looked around the room. "Starting next quarter, Store 7 is the pilot location for our new employee feedback initiative. Monthly forums, anonymous surveys, and direct access to HR for any concern. No more going through the wrong channels." Ariel raised an eyebrow. "Why us?" "Because you earned it. And because you proved something most people forget. Culture isn't built by policies, it's built by people." Noel clapped once. Then others joined, slowly, not out of obligation but belief. After the meeting, Miles stayed behind to lock up. He walked through the kitchen one last time, hand tracing the edge of the prep table, eyes lingering on the now clean mop closet. It wasn't just clean. It was right. He stepped out into the cold night, keys in hand, and let the door close behind him. The lights inside stayed on. But the weight he'd carried into that building, the disappointment, the guilt, the distance, he left that behind. And what replaced it was something stronger than pride. It was conviction. Earned, grounded, real.